Hi, you're right. How are we doing? So today is the last session before we actually start writing out our uh, assessment for the end of unit. So today we should have got our points, we should have got our evidence, and today we're going to be looking at analysis. Okay. So here are a little bit of support and a little bit of guidance on how to analyze. I'm going to give you as much time as possible in today's lesson, so don't worry. The first thing you need to do is identify techniques, okay, and to provide as much detail as you can in your analysis, all right? This is where all your marks are. So remember when we did the milkshake metaphor, all right? So the cherry on top is like the point. You need that there, all right? Otherwise, it's incomplete, all right? That's the gets the whole thing started. Then you've got like the cream and the froth, and we said that's like the evidence. But the main deal, the reason why we're there, the most important thing, it really is the analysis, and that's where you get all your marks. So yes, your points need to answer the question. Of course they do. Your evidence is obviously very important because you need to be supporting what you're saying with examples. But it's the analysis that shows that you really understand how the writer or the poet uses language, uses techniques, maybe even structure to produce the effects that they're trying to produce. Okay, so it shows you understand how language works. So, first of all, you need to identify the techniques. So, the easy techniques that we've covered are imagery, so that's anything that creates a vivid image in the reader's mind. All right. Simile, okay, similes are comparisons using like or as. Hyperbole, not hyperbole, is exaggeration. And a rhetorical question is one that doesn't require an answer and is designed to plant an idea in the audience's mind. All right. We've got some emotive language next, and emotive language is designed to create a particular emotional response in the reader. And then we can also look at the connotations of key words, okay? So we can look at what we associate and what the associations are with a particular word. So for example, in Island Man, he describes his island as an emerald, and we said, well, emeralds are precious and therefore important, all right, and valued. We can look at contrasts, so we can look at things that are different and wildly different. If they're very close together, we call that a juxtaposition. Metaphors or comparisons, these are a bit trickier to find. They're comparisons that don't use like or as, they're direct comparisons. So I'm a hungry wolf would be a metaphor. I'm as hungry as a wolf would be a simile. They are both figurative language. I am not actually an animal. I'm a human being. But they both explain my current state of hunger. Personification is another technique that sometimes people find it a little bit tricky to spot, and that's obviously describing something in the way that we would describe a person. So emotion or verbs that humans do that inanimate objects don't do would be a way to identify personification. Now you've done that, that's kind of the easy part. So you need to identify the techniques in your quote. Now, if you are struggling or you're not sure if it's a metaphor or personification or what the connotation of a word could be, you can ask me and I will help you a little bit, but I'm not going to analyze it for you because it is your assessment. So you need to be thinking about this. Likewise, nothing wrong with asking a friend for a bit of advice. But remember, they might not be right. And don't just get them to analyze it for you. All right, that's not the point of the exercise. Okay. Then we have the main techniques that we need to be looking at. So, sorry, the main questions that we need to be looking at when we're analyzing the techniques and the features. So, what technique is being used? What does this technique show or suggest? What can you infer? So, this is where we need to try and give development. We need to be saying more than one thing about a quotation. We shouldn't just be saying one thing about a piece of evidence. We should be trying to say two or three things about it, okay? So what can we read between the lines? What conclusions can we draw from that particular quote? Are there any connotations of keywords? So that's another important thing that we need to look at. What do we associate with particular words or phrases? What's the impact on the reader? What does the reader understand from this use of language? How they're impacted? Might they have a particular emotional response to what's going on? And then finally, what is the author trying to communicate or the poet trying to communicate? What are they trying to say? What are they trying to show? What's their purpose, okay, in writing it? So for each quote, these are the things you need to make notes about, all right? Now, if we go to our planning sheet, you can see, and it's the same for both. So actually, I'll go into option B because it's a little bit bigger here on the page. So we have our quote, and then the analysis, I've just put in notes underneath. Now you can see here, I'm answering the questions that we've just gone through, but I'm answering them just simply in the form of bullet points, all right? Because you don't need to write out the whole thing in sentences. This is a plan, all right? So it's really, really important that you add as much detail here as possible, because when you come to writing this up in full paragraphs, the more notes you have, the easier it will be in your assessment. All right. Now we know that we have a minimum of 4 quotations. We did this yesterday, all right, or the last lesson. And we have found here that we put our quotes in and then our analysis, our second quote, our second piece of analysis, and this is how we're going to write it. So the whole thing's written out like a P paragraph. So when it comes to writing out the real thing, this is going to be really easy because we've got our point, we've got our evidence, we've got our analysis. We just have to write this out in sentences and make sure it makes sense. That's the easy part. This is the hard part. All right. So when people say, when is our assessment? I hate that question because it seems to suggest that you're not doing your assessment now. This is part of your assessment, okay? This is the planning of it, and it's absolutely crucial. If this isn't done well, then you're going to struggle a little bit, okay? If it's done really well, you'll find it super easy. So it's really, really worth and really, really important to do all the hard work now. I just finished with one of my students doing an extended essay. And in year 12 and year 13, they have to write 4,000 words in an essay that has to be really well researched and everything. It's really hard work. And they have a supervisor for it. And so I was working with one of my students, and they said that they didn't really do a proper plan before they started writing. And they found it so difficult. And they basically had to rewrite the whole thing with a plan. So they had to go back, write out a plan, and then rewrite it. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is in English, it's super important that whenever you do a piece of extended writing, you need to plan what you want to say, all right? And you'll be planning your responses in exams as well, and obviously in coursework moving forward as well. So this is a really, really important skill to acquire. So what we're doing today is you're not going to write out anything. You're just going to fill in the analysis part. So you make sure that each of your quotes are fully analysed. So the example I've got here is Punjab. His grandmother's songs, lighting on his head, the old words glowing like summer fireflies. And I've managed to say 5 things about that quote. I've talked about the connotations of the word grandmother. I've talked about a metaphor. I've talked about the impact of particular words here, so the connotations, what that might mean there. It's metaphorical, actually. I've got a simile there that I've talked about. And I've also talked about the connotations of the word summer. So I've used the questions here, these questions, to help me produce a really detailed response to the analysis, all right? So if we can say as much as we can about a quote, then by the time you finish your P paragraph and you've gone through 2 quotes, then you're going to have a really thorough response, all right? Now, bearing in mind that I am online to help you out, I'm going to give you this lesson to do this so you can spend as much time on it as you possibly can and get a really, really great result, okay? But I will be online to answer any specific questions. But remember, I'm not going to analyze this for you, all right? So I want you to do your best, okay? Right, thanks a lot, guys, and all the best, and I'll see you soon.